Hi everyone, welcome to today's artist conversation. My name is Yingxi, and people also call me Zoe. I'm currently a doctoral candidate at Queensland College of Art and Design at Griffith University. I'm also an artist and a researcher working across cross-cultural contexts. This interview project is a series of long-form conversations with artists, curators, and art participants. It focuses on contemporary art practice, cultural context, local art ecosystems, and the ways artists think, work, and make within different environments. Through this project, I hope to gradually build an open archive of conversation that can serve as a public resource for artists, students, and researchers who are interested in contemporary art, cross-cultural practice, and the global contemporary art context. Today, I'm very pleased to speaking with my friend, artist Rosemary TC. Rosemary is an emerging artist based in Meanjin, Brisbane. Actually, we know each other. We met at Outer Space Art Gallery in Brisbane. And later we realized that we are alumni. And I think all these connections between us make us become friends. Rosemary has Vietnamese and Romanian European cultural heritage and was born and raised in Australia. This multicultural background has shaped the way she reflects on identity, cultural position, and artistic practice. Her work span sculpture, installation, poetry, and performance, and she often used Vietnamese rice paper as her main material. In today's conversation, we will discuss Rosemary's artist practice, her use of materials, her creative process, the context of contemporary art in Australia, and how artists and audience understand art across different culture and social environments.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rosemary Tamas-Cao. And yeah, as Zoe introduced, I am an emerging artist based here in Brisbane. And my practice kind of is a mixture of sculpture, installation, but I also work with poetry and performance sometimes. And I started at QCA or QCAD in painting. So I was a painting major, and that's kind of, I guess, my history. But I picked up sculpture and installation after playing around with a bunch of different mediums, and I found that this was what really had impact for me when I was creating my work.
So next, I will ask you some questions to let our audience better know your works. So could you tell me about your artist practice and how it has developed within these years? Yeah.
Yeah, so my artist practice, I would say, developed from, there was this one assignment in, I think, second year, and I decided to use rice paper. Now, sculpture is something that I thought was difficult for me. I couldn't just create a form or a 3D shape from clay. That was quite challenging. So I decided to approach the sculpture with materials that I grew up with, and that's why I chose to create a malleable kind of form with rice paper. And rice paper has become the material that has developed my practice in the past years. I've been working with it for, I think, 3 years now, and I think it's incredible, the ability and the versatility of that material to kind of create different shapes and act in its own way. Yeah. So for me, that was where I realized, oh, sculpture is this really wonderful expression that I hadn't considered before. And I think that's why I've kind of stayed with it. That's why I've kept using it and pushing it as far as I can. I want to use rice paper in these incredible ways that I would have never thought of in like back when I was younger, because it was just a material that I put veggies in and meat, and you roll it up and you eat it. That's what it was, and it was nourishing me. But as an artist, I think creatively it has so much potential, that material. So yeah, that's kind of how my artist practice developed. And yeah, at the moment I'm still continuing to push the rice paper. I'm gonna keep working with this material, I think, into the future.
Yeah. Because you just mentioned your materials is rice paper. So does this kind of materials or practice within your artist is a very important part related to your culture or other things?
It's absolutely related to my culture. I grew up eating so many rice products,
Yeah.
rice grains, and rice flour desserts, rice paper, rice noodles, and in a lot of Asian cultures, rice is so important. It's almost, I think it's called white gold in some cultures, and I think it really connects me to my Vietnamese culture because I felt disconnected growing up in Australia. I don't speak Vietnamese. I wasn't brought up with the language, and for me to be able to eat Vietnamese cuisine is the way that I am continually sustaining myself in my culture. Yeah, so definitely it plays a huge role in my own investigation of who I am and my identity and my place. Yeah.
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 Yeah, very thank you, Rosemary, to share this kind of things to related to her culture. And just like you said, you grow in Australian. So how would you describe the contemporary art ecosystems in Australia, especially for emerging, cultural, diverse artists?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a huge question. Big question. So, yeah, the emerging art ecosystem in Australia. I would definitely say, with those conditions of emerging, so just beginning or just starting out, and then also being culturally diverse. So, you might have multiple different backgrounds from different countries, and that's what I am. I'm half Vietnamese. My dad is Vietnamese, and my mum was Romanian from Europe. And then contemporary. Contemporary is this big scene, that has a certain character to it. It's different to traditional maybe painting. It's a range of sculptures and installations and photography. It's really encompassing. Like it's a big, broad array of things. So yeah, huge question. I would say definitely in Australia, this area is where I see the most ambitious and experimental kind of works. I think young artists or artists who are just beginning are really trying to break down some kind of barrier or make their voice known and burst out into the scene. So, they kind of really are looking to create some kind of interesting art. And that's what I was doing too. I was like, I was thinking what materials could really, set me apart, or what could make me feel interested in my own practice. So I would say that's something that you see in the Australian art ecosystem. A lot of thinking outside of the box, a lot of play with different materials or ideas. But I would also love to see more reachable art education here in Australia. I think, going to art school, it was kind of difficult to find the right resources to put me on track as an emerging artist. And I think that could be super helpful for this group of artists. So, things like research and things like just the way that you view art or think about art, or the way that you process or interpret art, kind of just breaking down art to the simple elements and then kind of, being creative about those, because I think that's where good art starts, when you kind of twist or play with the ground rules. And I think sometimes we forget the basic principles of art in this ecosystem because it's full of, it's full of pressure to make a living, and it's full of opinion as well, like political, and I would say there's a lot of art coming out that wants to make a statement on social factors and have that context, which is really important, but it's also, you need the background information to be solid there. And then I would also say just a note on the art ecosystem in Australia, it is hard to understand sometimes, like especially if you're new, especially if you don't know what contemporary art is. It's a big word. I would say, some things people say these terms, like I think we get it in a future question, this term ARI, or these other terms, and it's like what does that mean, or what does that actually stand for? So, but people are continually using it. So I think that's where sometimes you just need to break it down to simpler terms. But yeah, that's kind of my opinion. I think to be an emerging artist, you do have to be. You feel assured and confident in yourself, which is another thing that is difficult about it, feeling like you are an artist and saying to yourself, this is a real career, because it's almost like for young and culturally diverse artists, your ticket to being like a real artist or valid is saying your culture or standing up for your culture.
Yeah.
Which I think, if you're an artist and you're confident in what you want to say in any topic, then that should be valid.
Yeah.
In the scene. But yeah, I think that's my opinion on the Australian art ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I just find you mentioned something about multicultural because when we stay in Australia and we have lots of different cultures here, and actually, it's like you said, it's a good chance, or we have lots of positive opportunities for emerging artists. So I think, yeah, we can ecosystem is large word. So yeah, I totally agree. We have lots of positive things we can do. And for young artists, we have lots of different interests and put new things within contemporary art. So that's why that's called contemporary, not just traditional things. So multicultural make us contemporary, more contemporary. Yeah. So and like just you said about Ari, actually, I'm really interested in this topic because before I came here, I never heard the word Ari. Yeah, it's a very new word for me. So I know you are involved in running an Ari, and could you talk about something about your Ari and explain what kind of role Aris play in a local art community? Yeah.
I know some artists who don't know what ARI is, and I was the same. It took me 3 years into art school to come across the term ARI, and ARI is an abbreviation. It stands for Artist Run Initiative. And so, what is an initiative? And so for me, that was kind of the point where we had to brainstorm this hypothetical ARI. So we were making our own ARIs, and that's where my current ARI started. My ARI now is termed a collective, but it's called Artichoke, and it's a play on the words art and choke. But I was just being playful a little bit. I think, having a bit of fun with this idea of creating a new kind of environment for my peers and my community. So that was where the initial idea came from, and then I launched it in the following year. So I gathered a group of my art school friends who I knew had a lot of like creative potential and also poetic potential. And we work under this metaphor that we are enzymes, enzymes are like these molecules that break down food and get you the nutrients that you need for your body to absorb. And that's what I was kind of thinking about the art scene as what I wanted. I wanted more digestibility, and I wanted it to be more fun and more nutritional for emerging artists. So that's what I think ARIs have the role in playing. They are, for me, like the creative solutions that artists are creating for themselves in this really difficult scene that they find themselves in. And it's artists problem solving and building their own, resolution to maybe a lack of visibility, because when you have an ARI, you have to document, your space or how your system works. It could be meetings, gatherings, anything of the sort. And I think that's really inspiring. So, and it shows how dedicated artists are to their craft to create an ARI. And that's kind of, to me, it's like the emerging artist proving, this is the kind of creative potential that we have. Look at what we can do. And it's also a safe and encouraging space. I would say, if you find yourself in some galleries, there's standards to galleries and there's ways that galleries work. Whereas in an ARI, you can choose how you want to make it work. It's endless with potential. So they're making a space for themselves, and they're elevating themselves and learning also how to become an artist.
So thank you for your sharing. Not just as an artist. Actually, you are also a manager of ARI, and it's like not just for myself. Maybe our peer need more chance to show us. So it's like a balance things between yourself as artist and another role to do it. And I think it's very good.
Oh, thank you.
And let's talk about return to your artist. And another very interesting things I want to ask is about your practice, because just just as you said, does your Vietnamese background shape the way you make or think about art? If so, does it appear directly or more indirectly? Yeah, it's
Yeah, so my Vietnamese heritage appears directly in my practice through the matter that I'm working with. As you said, Vietnamese rice paper is this really inventive food ingredient that Vietnamese people have created from the humble grain of rice. And so every time that I'm working with rice paper, it's symbolizing to me the resourcefulness and the hardworking characteristics of Vietnamese people. And so when I work with it, I'm just really astounded by that. I'm really proud and mesmerized because rice paper has this beautiful texture and it's unlike anything. It's like almost like a wet glue, and it holds air really beautifully, and there's translucency as well. And so material, ingredients, I don't just work with rice paper, I also work with Southeast Asian flavorings like pandan extract or taro extract, and these things create this beautiful like colorings. I think in Vietnamese desserts it's very attractive and eye-catching. And then there's the furniture, there's the stools. So my recent body of work has been casting these little plastic Vietnamese colourful stools. They're so small, they're only for like squatting and sitting on. And I've been casting them by covering them with rice paper. So you have that form, which is directly being, copied in my practice. And then I'd say cooking. Cooking directly is a influence on my practice. I'm trying to create my own recipe for rice paper. And then once I have that recipe, I'm going to use the home-cooked rice paper to create my sculptures. And language. Language is the last direct thing. I've recently been adding some Vietnamese words to my poetry as a way to show, broken but language that is broken but trying to be learnt at the same time, trying to be incorporated into my practice and my speech. And then indirectly, I would say indirectly, my Vietnamese culture always has this background presence of I'm hardworking to create my works. My works are repetitive. They're sometimes difficult to make. They're frustrating to make because the rice paper behaves in its own way, and the rice paper is also changed by air conditions or the humidity. So for me, that's an indirect way that it's representing persistence and tenacity of the Vietnamese instinct or the Vietnamese culture, because Vietnamese people are really, really hardworking. And to me, the way that I create my artwork is like that. I'm working in the sense of a Vietnamese person. And then also this resourcefulness or this cheapness, working with things that are, inexpensive or don't have much worth, but turning them into something beautiful or turning them into something that really has a gorgeous story to it. I think that's a skill that Vietnamese people have, and it's something that I myself am trying to tap into and trying to show. And I think it's within me. It's kind of within the Vietnamese blood that they can engineer really inexpensive materials to be these inventive creations. So yeah, and it's humble materials too. So the other materials that I work with, like onion skins, my own hair, and garlic skins and things, they cost nothing. They're invaluable, but I think that they have this beautiful ability to show that organic matter can be turned into something that is a beautiful artwork and worthy of expression. Because in my eyes and in my practice, matter or material has a voice, or it has an agency, and also the air around it has the ability to change it. Not just me as an artist, the air is an artist. Yeah, that's probably how my Vietnamese culture plays. It's really it's really deep. Like it goes down. And I like that you asked me indirect ways, because it's not always visible, to see how I am working with my Vietnamese traits or the ways that I've picked up from growing up. It's not always obvious, but it's definitely there. It's definitely present.
Yeah. I like you just said deep, because after I listen everything you said, this kind of directly and indirectly things, I can feel that all these things make you unique. Yeah, like your language things and material things and something hardworking under Vietnamese people. Yeah, that's, I think everything make you unique. And yeah, thank you for sharing these things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel not just for our audience, for me, I learned a lot. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And so, last questions I want to ask is, so which kind of advice? So, do you have any suggestions? Would you give to some young artists working between cultures? And I think, yes, you are definitely have the role to, you can speak some things. Yeah.
For young artists, so artists who I can imagine myself starting out, I would say that sometimes trying to impress people in the art scene can suffocate you, and it's not worth it. You want to have your own authentic voice as an artist, and that should come first. And sometimes, you have to identify what it is as an artist that is mentally choking you, like holding you back, and then either scoop it out or find a creative way to alleviate that pressure. I think that's really important as an artist to do. And also go at your own pace. Don't rush, or don't try and force yourself to be, meeting people or doing all these things or, running yourself down. Just enjoy it. I think an artist's career should be fulfilling. So, yeah, that's my advice to a young artist.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I find sometimes we talk about become an artist is a very, you should have lots of courage to do these things, to become an artist, not a very stable job, or you have you can earn a lot of money right now. But I feel it's a very worth things to do, and you can make a lot of fun within it. And I really thank you, Rosemary, can share her stories with us. And today is our first conversations, and I think thank you, Rosemary, for this conversation. Thank you.